So a couple of weeks ago, I showed you the difference between a single and dual reservoir. Today, I'm at Brothers Tech Center to go ahead and install the dual master cylinder booster on Sal's truck here. Now, this is a 62, but 60 to 66 are all basically the same. On top of all that, I'm going to show you how to bend up some brake lines, double flare the lines, and some other options you have. So you make sure you stay tuned, yeah? Now, one of the tools that's really going to help you out with this here is to get one of these. This is specifically made for brake lines, basically. And you can see how the crescent end here, it curves over more and it gets more contact, it's thicker. So it gives you a better grab onto the bolts that are on here. And the reason for that is that they are generally really frozen on and they normally will not come off. Now this one here came off really nice and easy. I'm really surprised. Normally they are not going to come off at all and you're just going to have to cut them off. But I like to try and to get these off with these first, because if I can tie into the old line. If it's not too rusty and beat up, then I can just use the existing brake lines if they're looking good enough. So go ahead and try to disconnect your lines first with one of these tools. If it doesn't work, then you're just going to have to cut it off, but don't worry, I'm going to show you how to fix that too. The master cylinder is only held in with 3 bolts. 2 on the side, 1 on the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and get this out, and I'll be back in 1 second to show you what we're going to be doing with our new booster and new master cylinder. Now, even though I've done a bunch of these, I still like to go over the directions anyway, because sometimes there are new idiosyncrasies that I don't know about. This plate right here, it's going to go right on here and it's just going to bolt into the original bolt holes. And then it's got extra holes that you're going to need to drill out. Now your kit may or may not come with this depending on what year you have. This is a 62. The 60 to 62 will come with this bracket right here. And all you got to do is just put it right up on here and you'll be able to see what bolt holes line up or not right out of the gate. And you're just going to go ahead and bolt them right on up. Now there are welded nuts on the other side of this that are on the bracket. Sometimes they'll be stripped out, sometimes they'll just fallen out over the years, so that is common. Like this one here should have been a welded in nut, but it fell out over the years. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bolt these on, and then I'll use a 3/8 inch drill bit and I'll drill out the remaining holes that aren't already exposed. Now I'll have where I'm going to be bolting my booster onto right here. So let me go ahead and drill all these holes out and everything like that, and I'll show you what comes next in just a sec. So we've drilled out the 4 holes that our template here shows. Now, if you were to take your master cylinder booster and try to mount it up, then you're going to hit this bolt right here. So we're going to take that one out, but we'll leave the other 2 in. And again, these are the original bolt holes where the original master cylinder went in. So that's how you know that everything else is in line. So I've got that out. Now these are grade 8 bolts, so they're the toughest bolts you can get basically for this kind of a thing. And what you're going to want to do is get your washer on the nut. On the opposite side, you're going to use a washer, a lock washer, and then the nut. Now there are a few spots where it is difficult to get a washer and on there. So in that case, I think there's 1 or 2 spots we'll just have a lock washer on, and that's it, because the brace kind of bumps up into it. Another thing that you're going to want to do too is just loosen up these brackets right here just a little bit, because it'll make it easier to adjust these brackets and line up all of the holes. So that's just going like that. Now I've got somebody on the inside that's going to go ahead and get our nut started in there. And like I said, some of them are kind of bumping up against brackets and things. So go ahead and get the nut on that is easy to get to, and then tighten it up a little bit, and then go for your more difficult nuts. All right, so our proportioning valve is bolted on, and I've left it just a little bit loose because we're going to need to install these lines right here that come with the kit all pre-bent and ready to go. But I need a little bit of movement to be able to get these on. But before I put these on, we're going to need to bench bleed the master cylinder. This is probably one of the most important things whenever you're doing this kind of a job, because if you have air bubbles in your master cylinder, it's going to give you a weak, spongy pedal forever, and no matter how many times you bleed your brakes at the wheel cylinder or the front brakes, it's just not going to bleed out. So before we can do our bench bleed, I need to attach our rods on the inside. Let's go in and see how we do that. Now what we're going to do is replace this old rod with this rod right here that has the coupler on the end that's going to bolt right onto our shaft that's coming out of our booster. So in order to take this off, it's no big deal. It just simply unbolts nice and easy like. And we won't be using any of this, so we can put all that away. Now, sometimes on these brake bars right here, there will be two holes, one at the top and one about 1.5 inches down. If yours does not, you're going to need to measure that 1.5 inches down from that hole, make a mark and drill a hole out. Now a lot of times these are all old and dirty and it's hard to see and things like that, so what you might want to do is just get some tape and put it up here, and that'll make it easier to see. And we're really going to want to get it, you know, right dead center of our rod right here, so we've got some nice thick metal to get a hold of. So we go from that hole, we're going to go 1.5 inches. I want to measure here. It looks like it's about 1.5 inches thick, so we're going to go 3/4 of an inch to get dead center. You might want to use one of these two. It's just a punch that will put a little divot in there and make it easier for us to drill that hole out accurately. Now we're going to need to drill that out with a 3/8 drill bit, but what I normally like to do is get a smaller bit and drill a bit of a pilot hole first. The reason being is that sometimes when you're using a 3/8 drill bit or larger, it'll dance around on you a bit, and we want to make sure this is really accurate, so this is as beefy as possible. So just drill a little bit of a pilot hole that's going to be able to help you. Don't need to drill all the way through. Just want to make sure my larger drill bit doesn't walk on me. So now here is the push rod that comes with your kit, and this is the coupler that comes with the kit in order to be able to bolt onto the rod right there. And when we install in a coupler like this, we need to make sure that we've got good meat of the threads inside the coupler. We can't have one side with only 2 or 3 threads and the other side's got 10. So in order to make sure we've got both that have good meat on them, we just simply adjust this bolt right here until we see that we're in about the middle, just a little bit less than the middle, because we want some adjustment room if we need it. So that's good there. So now I can go ahead and put my coupler on, and I know that I've got a good amount of threads holding that on. I can do the same thing on this one, and then go ahead and install this. And the same thing goes with the heim joint right here on the end. So even if this is installed on here, I don't just assume it's in the right spot. I go ahead and unscrew it, and I make sure that I've got a good amount of thread that's going to be holding this on. This is, for instance, your brakes. So they got to be really beefy and really safe. And once I get this back on here, I'll screw it all the way down. And these have adjustment in it, so you might need to have it shorter, longer, what have you. What you're going to want to make sure is that when you're attaching this to the brake pedal right here, a couple of things you got to watch for is you got to have your nut on, your bolt. You got one washer on the left side, the driver's side, and on the passenger side, you got one washer and this spacer right here, and that's so that when you put it into the brake rod right here, that it will won't rub up against the brake rod right there. Now, when we're installing this, we have to make sure that no pressure is being applied to the booster, because if there's even a residual amount of pressure, that pressure will build up and it'll actually apply your brakes without you wanting to. So you have to make sure there's no pressure on that. We can see that there won't be by installing it right here. So that's going to go right like that. This will go on and tighten up. Now I'll go on the outside and I'll show you how to bench bleed your master cylinder. Now don't forget to tighten down these lock bolts right here so that the rod doesn't loosen up on you, okay? So our kit is going to come with a master cylinder bench bleed kit. And it's just going to look like this right here with some hoses. This piece right here is going to go right there on the master cylinder in the middle. These guys right here, they are going to screw into right here. Now before I stick them on there, I like to put the hose on. The hose is pretty small and it's difficult to put it on there a lot of times. So what I'll do is I'll just get something like this and I'll put it on there to enlarge the end of the hose. I'll leave it on there for a while, let it get formed in that shape. Then I can take it off and I can put it on this generally a lot easier. And then I'll go ahead and I'll screw this guy on. And one thing you'll notice is that the back hole right here is larger and the front hole is a little bit smaller. And that's so people don't get confused on what's front, what's back, what's going to the proportioning valve. And then you're going to just take your hose and you're going to put it right through the holes that's in this little bracket right here, and you want to shove it all the way down into the master cylinder, because what's going to happen is that when we're bleeding this, the air bubbles are going to come on out, go through the tube, and then into the fluid. If this hose is kind of sticking up in the air, sometimes it'll suck air back in and then make it more difficult to bleed your master cylinder. And again, this is probably the most important, stick on this whole installation, because you don't want a soft spongy pedal. And these are just little plastic fittings here, so you don't need to bolt them down or anything. So that's going to go in there. We'll go ahead and pour our brake fluid in. I'll fill it up pretty high. I don't want to get it too high because sometimes it'll splash over air bubbles and things like that. And then I'm just going to get in the truck and gently press on the pedal, and you'll be able to see the air bubbles coming through here. So here you can see the air bubbles, and then we're just going to slowly press down on the pedal, let it slowly retract. You'll notice the air bubbles going backwards. So if that hose is not into the fluid, it can just suck up more air and take longer. So I'll just do this a bunch of times really, and then I'll get all the air out of this, and then I'll show you how to hook up some of the other lines. So just give me a minute and I'll be right back. So I've done this for several minutes, and you can see now we don't have any more air bubbles coming through, and we're all ready to go. Now brake fluid will eat your paint. So if you do have a painted truck, what you want to do is get a rag and put it on your inner fender or your frame or anything like that, and spray water down first, because water will neutralize the brake fluid. If you do get any brake fluid on your hands or anything, make sure you don't touch any of your painted surfaces, because it will transfer over and it will ruin your paint. Sure as shooting. So right here I got a couple of different options. I can put these lines on right now, but if I do, then of course fluid is going to get into my proportioning valve here. I don't want that to leak out, so I can buy a little plug right here and I can simply put those in. There is two in the front, one at the top and one at the bottom, and there's one in the back. So that's one option you have, or you can just leave this hooked up, run all your other brake lines first, and then after everything's set, then you can go ahead and bolt this on right when you're ready to go ahead and bleed the rest of the brakes. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to simply take this off so I can show you how these attach. I want to do this pretty quick because I don't want my brake fluid to spill on the floor too much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get these out and I'm going to place them up here and I'm going to see, okay, that looks like that goes to the front, that looks like that goes to the back. Don't be afraid of getting it wrong really, because like I said, these do have different size holes. So you're not going to be able to screw anything else in here except for this one end. It's just not going to go. Now we let this loose a little bit here so that we can go ahead and attach this. Hopefully it'll make it easier. And then we'll do the same thing with the front. I haven't tightened these up all the way either just yet because I need to still have it loose a little bit in order to put my front one on. All right, so let's take a look at our brake system and do a little bit of planning, okay? Now what we've got going on originally is we just had our single master cylinder here and just one line coming down. That line would have gone down to your frame and there would have been a T on there, and that T is going to go ahead and branch off to your left front and your right front wheel. And then over here somewhere there's going to be another T. And that T there is going to feed the line going to the rear. There will be a soft line and then hard lines going to your rear wheel cylinders here. Now what we're going to be doing is we need two lines now. We're going to need one for the front and one for the back. We can't have them tied together. So in order to accomplish that, we've got a couple of different options. Now if you've got a 63 to 66 only, then you can go ahead and you can buy this kit from us right here and it'll bolt onto your dual master cylinder, and then it has enough of the components to go to your left and right and tie into your original system. Even comes with T's, couplers, miscellaneous other things like that that you're going to need to accomplish that too. Now let's say you have a 60 to 62 like this, or you want to do a custom job, or you just want to go ahead and learn it. What's going to happen then is we're going to go ahead and we're going to come down from our master cylinder for our front brakes. We're going to go into a T, and then if we were using the original system, which I don't necessarily recommend because it's old and it's rusty and things like that, but if you were going to tie into your original system, you would come down to the T that feeds your front, and then you would have to eliminate this T right here and you'd have to put a coupler right in there. And now you got your front brakes done. Now we got to come down with our second line, and then we're going to need to tie in to where this T was, and all you'd need to do there is you could use a 90-degree coupler, or you could just simply bend the line to where and get a coupler in here. So you got a couple of different options here. I'm going to go ahead and show you some tips and tricks on brake lines now so you can do it too. All right, so let's go over a few different things that we've got going on in the front on this proportioning valve. The first thing I want you to notice is that there's a plug hole right here and here. Now what we can do is we can just run a line down from the bottom and then T it and go to our front, or you can run one line from here and go to the right and one line here and go to the left. I don't actually like to do that because I have to bend twice as many lines and stuff. So I'll just be putting a plug in the top, running a line off the bottom, going to a T, and then that'll be fine to go. Now this right here, this is for the rear. And the rear on this, it has a relatively large hole in there. You're going to need to get an adapter for that and bolt that on in order for your 3/16 brake line to go on there. Now you do have some, I suppose, debate. Some people think that you should go with a 5/16 line off of this and then go all the way back. I've never done that. I've never seen a reason for it. Everybody I've talked to doesn't like the idea. I just use 3/16 line front and rear. It's just about the pressure that you need to apply. It doesn't really have to do with volume. So back line, front line, and let's take a look at some of the tools that we'll be needing. These aren't expensive. I think this thing cost me like 10 bucks at best. I think this one here might have been like 10, 15. The tools that you're going to need to cut the pipe and flare out the ends and everything like that, do yourself a favor and spend a couple of extra bucks. Don't buy the least expensive one because they're, you know, just a little shoddier and they don't give you quite a crisp, clean cut and flare that you're going to need so you don't get any leaks. So just step it up. You don't have to get the most expensive one, just don't get the cheapest one. Another thing, that when you go get brake lines, and let's say for instance you figured out, okay, well I'm only going to have to do this one brake line to here and it's only say 3 feet long. Don't buy a 3-footer, just buy the longest one they have, which is typically 60 inches, because the chances of you messing up is actually pretty good, especially if you're doing this for the first time. So you're going to want to have extra pipe in case you need it. Now, one of the things that you got to do when you're running your lines from your proportioning valve down to your frame is you got to remember that your cab is on rubber bushings, okay? And when you drive and you really hit a corner or a bump or something like that, you get some flex in the frame too. So if you were to come off of this here and just do say a hard 90 degrees and a hard 90 degrees and then take it down, then what happens is you get too much stress on that 90 degree whenever there's any flexing from the cab to the frame. So what you're going to need to do is put a little curly Q in the pipe before it goes down to the frame, and that little curly Q is going to be able to give you a little bit of forgiveness room for any movement that goes in there. Now, how I do a curly Q is I'll typically use the end of my jack right here. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to kind of map out how I'm going to do this. Sometimes I'll even put on my inner fenders just to make sure that I got proper clearance and things like that. You might want to make sure that your engine and your exhaust is all hooked up, because a lot of times those things will get in your way and it'll make a decision of whether you're going to go, say, to the back of the cross member right here, or maybe you're going to put the lines to the front of the cross member. So you're going to figure all those things out before you start bending anything up. Another thing you can do too is get some a coat hanger, and then you can simply bend the coat hanger with your fingers and you can trial fit things and you can see what's going to rub or not rub and look good or not. So give me a few minutes to map this out and see what I'm going to like the best, and I'll be right back and show you how to do a curly Q. Okay, so I got my hanger here, and I can see that if I go about like this right here, then it'll curly Q and come to the side, and I can go down my frame right here. So I'm going to go ahead and bend that up. Now what I do is I use this right here, see? And I just wrap it around like that, and it makes my curly Qs for me. So we go like this here. Okay, double check. Let's see. All right, got to get a little bit more of a turn on that. More of a 90. Okay. Now what I'll do is I'll actually bolt this on, and then I'll get a marker and I'll mark right where I got to bend it here, and then I'll do a 90 degree down to my cross member there. When I mark my brake line, what I'll do is I'll make a mark where I'm going to make my bend, okay? And then I'll mark the top of it so that I'll know it's the top. Because once you start bending these things in the free air, so to speak, you kind of maybe forget which way you're supposed to bend it. So if you have a mark that'll tell you that, it makes it a lot easier. Now again, this tool is pretty inexpensive to bend it here. You don't want to bend it with your fingers, okay? Because what's going to happen is the center of the hose here, the center of the pipe, it's going to collapse. You have to use one of these tools here. Now you want to notice on this tool, it has different grooves in it here, and that's for different size brake line fittings or fuel fittings you might be working with. So make sure that you get it into the right groove for the size, and make sure you get all of your the line up of where the bend is going to be. Okay, so we've got our mark right here, and if I move this in too far right here, then it's not going to bend in the right spot. I need to make sure that when I have this bend that it's coming down here. So we'll go like this, get that in the right spot, and then just nice and easy bend. And we're good to go. So I'll go ahead and I'll bolt it up again. You can see now it's a little bit too long and it's interfering with me trying to fit it. So I'll cut some off, but I'm only gonna cut off a minimum amount. I wanna leave as much length as possible because I haven't decided where I'm gonna be cutting it down there or how I'm gonna route it. So when we're cutting pipe, we gotta use a specific tool. Let me show you that. This is the tool that will come in most of your flaring kits. If it doesn't, then just go ahead and purchase it. It's pretty inexpensive. You're just going to go ahead and put it in there like that and then screw this edge down. And you're not going to tighten it up too much. You're just going to have a light touch on there. And then you're going to go ahead and turn the pipe. And then you're going to slowly turn this edge. And then you'll rotate this 180, 360 degrees. You'll tighten down the end again, and you just keep doing this little by little until it cuts through the pipe. You don't want to put too much pressure on it because it can crush the pipe and miscellaneous things like that. You don't want to use dikes. You can't use a cutter on it. You're going to get metal shavings in there. So this is the only tool to use when you're doing that. Now, another thing that's nice to have that may or may not come with your kit is this little specific bevel tool right here. Or flaring tool maybe, I don't know. And all it is that it is used to take any burrs out of the pipe. You want to put it upside down like this because if you put it like this, any burrs or any shavings are going to go into your pipe. So we'll go like this. And then we got that looking nice. Double check. No, it's good. So now let me show you how to flare your brake line. And I understand this is kind of scary and you know, that kind of thing, and you're like, oh, brakes are pretty serious, and they are, but it's not like you can't do it. What you're going to want to do is, if you haven't done this before, then just get some pipe and practice doing 2 or 3 flares. Don't do it on the truck first. Practice it somewhere else first. Now, one of the things you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and you see that we've got different holes right here for different size brake lines. And what you're going to do is you're going to have your brake line come up a bit, and it'll depend on different kits and how much actually comes up or not. Most of the time, what your kit will tell you to do is to take your end flaring piece right here and put it up against there, and then the thickness of this right here is exactly the thickness or the height that the pipe might come through. So we'll get that in the right spot. If you come up too high, it'll mess things up. If you go down too low, it's going to mess things up. So you got to be in the right spot and then tighten it down. Now, another thing that I always forget when I'm doing this, you see this? It doesn't have the threaded end on here. And I forget to do that all the time. But it's not a big deal because we're just doing an example for you. I don't have time to do this whole truck because it does take me, I don't know, maybe about 5 or 10 hours to do a complete vehicle. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this, okay, and you see this? This is the flaring piece that goes on top. We're going to put that on, and we're going to get this on. And I like to get everything just loosely snugged up, make sure it's all nice and even and everything like that. Sometimes these can get a little kicky cat corner on you. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to tighten it down. And I'm not tightening it down until it's just getting crushed out. I'm just tightening it down until it flares out some. So now I'll go ahead and take this back off. And let's take a look at what this looks like. So I'm not sure if you can see that on camera or not, but it's just basically taken the top of our brake line and it's just kind of flared it down like this. So now what we do is we put this back on and we put it right in the center of the pipe and we tighten it down. And again, we're not smashing anything down. We're not trying to torque the hell out of anything. I want to have it nice and firm, but I don't want to go too crazy. I actually want it just a little bit fat and fluffy so that when I'm actually bolting it on for the first time, then it gets crushed down to the proper size. But if I smash it all the way down too small, then I might end up with a leak. So give yourself just a little edge way and it'll make it easier for you. So now when I'm done, that's what that looks like there. That's a double flare. And now that won't leak on you. So I'm not going to go through the whole truck because, like I said, it takes quite a bit of time, but all the techniques are just what I showed you. Curly cues, your bends, your flaring your ends, and that's it. It's just going to be different places and different directions, and that's it. So make sure you get dual master cylinder on your trucks. You're safe. Make sure you check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and subscribe to the YouTube channel because, well, you know, it's just the proper thing to do. If you don't, your friends are going to make fun of you, neighbors aren't going to talk to you. It's going to be a bad deal. You really got to subscribe.